Gary V, you are an all-knowing guru. You can advise us on business. You can advise us on life. You're an entrepreneur, motivational speaker. Like seriously, the list goes on. I'm so happy that you're with us here today.
Me too. Thank you so much.
Procrastination.
Yes.
Okay. It is the bane of our lives sometime. Can you tell us how we can tackle this habit?
Yeah, I think when I think about procrastination, really what's happening is people are telling that they're actually scared of failing in front of others. Most people procrastinate because of one of two things. One, fear. And fear is just the thing that I most want to combat in the world. They're actually genuinely worried that if they do this thing and it doesn't go well, their mother, their aunt, their best friend, their sister, their coworker is going to cast judgment on them, and they're basically living their lives based on someone else's opinion. Or number two, and this one's very interesting, they just genuinely don't like it. And that actually might be okay. It might be okay that you don't love school, that you don't love handiwork around the house, but things need to still get done, and understanding how to persevere through things you don't like is just a journey in life.
People associate procrastination with laziness.
Yes.
But you gave us a whole other explanation to it.
Yeah, I mean, I am one of the least lazy people I know, but I procrastinate in so many things. And so, to your point, I think that I understand why people do that. That's been the way we've talked about procrastination for a long time. I just don't see it that way.
Okay, when you're feeling lazy, is there a certain morning routine that you do so that you can snap out of that laziness and really get going?
You know, I think for me, what motivates me is gratitude. When I wake up and I don't feel it, you know, I always kind of go into a place of gratitude. You know, maybe I don't feel it, but some people don't even have the option of waking up this morning. You know, some people have way harder things to deal with than I have to right now. And so, one, I lean into gratitude. The other one is self-love and lack of judgment. It's okay, even at the highest levels, to have a Wednesday morning where you're just not feeling it. You don't need to beat yourself up. I think the thing that happens to a lot of people is they get into a tailspin. They wake up on a Wednesday, they don't feel it, and then all of a sudden, they go into this crazy place of like, I stink, I'm bad. They start to beat themselves up. They start deploying judgment.
Like self-destruction in a way, right? And then it's like a downward spiral, and it's so hard to get out of that.
And for me, the way I go is one of two extremes. Deep gratitude, like I said, which is like, yeah, but like, I'm very lucky, let's go. Or, hey, today is gonna be one of those days out of 365 days in this year where I am just gonna be down for a little bit, and that's okay. Like I don't have, and for me, I'm supposed to always be up for the world, for my family, for my employees, 100%. But it's okay to have some of those days. And a lot of times, once you're kind to yourself and say it's okay, by midday, you kind of can turn it.
Fast money.
Yes.
Do you believe it exists? And can it last?
Oh, it exists. I mean, there are many scenarios in the last 30 years where people were able to make a lot of money in a very short period of time. I'm very concerned by fast money because I think it creates a framework that is incredibly vulnerable. You know,
in what sense?
In the sense that a lot of people that make fast money were looking for fast money. And, you know, I think all of us, again, watching, have seen people make money, lose money, make money, lose money, make money, lose money. And I think that's because they're gambling more than they're building. And so for me, fast money is always a concern. It often talks about gold rush mentality. We saw it in NFT land. We see it in real estate. We see it in the stock market. We see it in emerging new things like startups, cannabis. There's a lot of things around the world when I look that have created it. Many of them have very sustainable long-term businesses in it. It's just that
are these exceptions?
There are exceptional times that create different moments, and we've seen this over and over. It's just something to be weary of. You know, it's something to be weary of. I've always been very concerned about the concept.
People make fast money on TikTok, don't they?
Some, a small percentage, yes. Like there are definitely hundreds of thousands of people, which is a lot.
Yeah.
But it's not a lot compared to 8 billion, excuse me. And so, yeah, I mean, I think, but don't forget, it wasn't so fast. You know, I was making videos about TikTok's an opportunity for 5 years now. It's the last 24 months where it's hit critical scale, and a lot of people that made it were also making content on Vine, on Snapchat, on Instagram.
Had a history.
And now they had their moment.
Within companies, some people have that mindset where they enter and they want to skip several levels in their career trajectory and they just want to be CEO straight away.
Look, I think what you're referring to is entitlement. And so I think entitlement is bad.
Yeah.
I see it. There is a lack of patience. People want to get promoted much quicker today than they did 20 years ago.
100%.
But I don't judge Gen Z for that. A lot of people are like, oh, Gen Z. The world is faster.
Yeah.
Everything's faster.
Yeah.
And so I don't judge it, but I do understand it to be a very big vulnerability.
Is entrepreneurship for everyone?
A lot of people like to talk about, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm capable, I can do it, but they are talking. In real life, when they only talk to themselves, they realize they don't want that pressure. They don't want that work ethic. They don't want that pain.
How many hours do you work per day?
Probably in the ballpark of 10 to 15.
Okay.
You know, and that's probably down a little bit from pre-COVID.
Okay.
But for me, it's a little bit different. I think I'm in a very small group of people who love what they do so much. It's like their hobby. It's very hard to build a company if you're the leader on an 8-hour workday. It's very hard.
You know what else is hard? Depression.
Yes.
Depression is very hard. As a motivational speaker, I'm sure you came across people that are very successful, but also very depressed. Can these two elements coexist?
I would say easily. I think that's very common. I don't think money changes people's internal emotional framework. I think it actually accelerates it. I think that if you're in a very good place, money accelerates that truth. I think if you're in a very bad place, money accelerates that. You're able to afford escapism and other coping mechanisms. And so, yeah, I think that's very common, but I think there's all frameworks. I think there's people who have a lot of money who are very at peace, a lot of money and depressed.
Hey, Gary, what time do you wake up?
Usually around 6:30 to 7:30 in the morning.
All right, so it's 6:30 in your house in New York. What's the first thing that you do?
I check my phone. Unfortunately, this goes back to the pressure of being a business person. Because my company is global and I have offices in London and Singapore and all over the world, I have to check my phone to make sure there's nothing on fire.
All right, talk us through like your daily routine.
I check my phone, make sure nothing's on fire, then I'm happy. Then I look through my emails and texts to see, just get the lay of the land. Then I usually work out right away, and then whether I take my kids to school or not, one of those two things, and then basically I start my workday. 2.
Oh.
And so to me, I basically am working by 8:30, like fully in action. I don't really take lunch. So I'm working all the way through 7, 8, 9, 10, depending on the day. And that's my day.
And when do you rest?
On the weekends.
Do you have any hobbies? Like,
I love
any form of catharsis during the day?
My work is my catharsis.
Oh,
you know, this goes back to the point, like, I'm not really overly anxious or stressed by my work.
When did you leave Belarus? Can you talk to us about your childhood a little bit more?
I was born in the Soviet Union. I left when I was 3, so I don't really remember it.
Oh, okay.
I came to the U.S. When I was 3.5, 4, because it took some time to get to the U.S. And, you know, we grew up very, very, very humbly. I lived with my great-grandparents, my grandma, my parents, my uncle. And it was very humble in Queens, New York. We lived there for a couple years, then we moved to New Jersey. And Edison, New Jersey is really where I started my life in a lot of ways. And that's where Lemonade stands, selling baseball cards. That's where my entrepreneurial spirit really was great.
What is the best industry to invest in the Middle East?
For everyone who's watching, the number one thing to invest in is things you understand. You know, so a lot of people, I mean, that's probably the biggest question I get. Gary, where do I put my money? I'm like, in something you understand. So like if you're a fashion enthusiast and you really love it, well then go spend a couple extra hours looking at the finances and the business realities of your 3 or 4 favorite brands. And maybe for you, the best thing to do is buy LVMH stock because you understand it. The other thing to look out for is if you're doing early stage, forget about the industry, invest in the person.
As an angel investor, are you concerned in the future of investing into startups in the light of the Silicon Valley Bank collapse?
Am I concerned? Not per se, because I actually think that what we will see coming out of this is less money being thrown at things that aren't viable businesses. In a weird way, I'm less concerned, not more concerned. Because I think what a lot of money and financing does is it hides a lot of vulnerabilities of a startup. And that a lot of startups weren't built on actually building a business, but by becoming financial engineering companies. All they ever do is raise capital. And so I think with less capital or more expensive capital, it's going to force businesses to be real businesses.
You identify yourself as a serial entrepreneur.
Yes.
Not many people are aware of the terminology. Can you please elaborate on that?
You know, I don't know what the official, definition is,
Yeah,
but for me,
what's your definition,
my
Gary?
definition is I have lots of businesses. I want to open more businesses. I only think about businesses and I want to create them and invest in them. And so for me, the serial part of the entrepreneur is just, it speaks about volume. It speaks about in perpetuity. It speaks about, doing this to the last breath I have on earth. And so that's how I see it.
Okay, Gary, my last question to you. Is Chat GPT going to replace me?
I don't think so. As a writer, I think what's going to happen is it's going to actually enhance you.
Okay.
So what people are missing with artificial intelligence is it takes the commodity and makes it more efficient.
So we go hand in hand.
I think you go hand in hand because the critical thinking that you need to input into an AI software is actually the most interesting part. And so it's going to save you time. Instead of having to write out everything, you're going to be editing your own thought output. And so I think that's going to allow you to actually write better articles because you're going to have more time to think and less time doing the commodity.
Got you. That is actually very reassuring.
I'm glad.
Thank you, Gary.
Thanks for
having me. It was lovely having you here.
Thank you so much.